Welcome to the regularly scheduled Town Council meeting of November 18, 2013. Before we begin, I want to identify that we have a Cub Scout troop that's with us this evening from Cub Scout Pack 51, and Maria Pace is kind enough to bring the group with us, and we'd actually like to ask that group to come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So come on up, guys. You can come right up in the circle. Terrific. First of all, thanks for coming. Lead us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I think we want to get a picture with you guys while you're up here, so stay up just for a second. Come on in close, and then if you guys flip around and look at the, we'll get you all in. Thank you. Thanks for coming. I should mention that this group came under Maria's guidance to get a chance to look at government in action. I think it's part of an experience that they're getting to see leadership, and hopefully we demonstrate good leadership skills for them while they're here today. So thanks for coming. Attendance, Dolores?
Counselor Hemmon.
Here.
Counselor Hurley. Counselor Kotkin.
Here.
Counselor Manusos.
Here.
Counselor Martino.
Here.
Counselor Rell.
Here.
Counselor Roberts.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Barry.
Here.
And Mayor Montanari.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dolores. Our first order of business is a public hearing on the resolution to initiate the charter revision process. Are there any members of the public interested in speaking on that specific topic? Mr. Rue.
Good evening, George A. Rue, 956 Cloverdale Circle. Charter revision is probably one of the more important tasks that any level of government undertakes. It's the constitution by which we all live, hopefully, and which oftentimes government doesn't live under too well. They kind of bend the rules a little. So I, for one, would certainly looking forward to having this happen. A couple of thoughts I'd like to share with you. The term limits might be something you got to think about, among other things. I'll touch on a few. I don't have them in any particular order here. I think one of the problems of government at all levels, and I've seen it locally in town, when people brag about I've been on government for 25 years, you know, you start to wonder whether or not the Peter Principle hasn't taken effect. Because you reach a point where your level of input becomes diminished. And it's something to think about. I don't know whether you can do it, whether it's possible, but at least there ought to be the basis for some discussion. Budget referendums, I think, in many communities throughout the state, the citizenry have a right, and I think they have a right. And I don't think that right should be taken away by some local governmental unit, to share with our elected leaders what our thinking is on the budget. And if the citizenry don't agree, they ought to have the right to say, hey guys, go back and do some more homework. And what if that, again, that's not going to be something that's easy to do. I don't think you're going to find too many politicians rushing to and being supportive of it. But let's hope that it's the basis for conversation, and perhaps something may be done. And if you do it, just don't say you've got to change the budget and then come back and change it by $1 and off it goes and you don't have any further say. One of the problems that I have seen as I share thoughts with both levels of government is the inconsistency in how government reacts to the citizenry at large. And perhaps within the framework of the charter, perhaps, again, things to think about, to make certain that when the citizens come up to this podium, be it whoever they are, that they are appropriately respected and given the appropriate amount of time And that doesn't mean a half an hour, but it means letting people finish what they've got to say, so that this is handled on a uniform basis across both levels of government in town. And as far as the process itself is concerned, I would urge that you make sure that the meetings are well announced, that they be held in environments where citizens can visit, and hopefully be able to participate. I can recall the last budget, the last referendum, I attended a number of meetings. I think Jerry was involved in that, as my memory serves me, and I've got a big, thick file of it at home. At the time, the taxpayers were still a potent force in town. They were still alive, but now most of them are not alive at this point. But in any event, we did have many opportunities and to be able to share thoughts with those persons who are doing the process. And last but not least is to make certain that the mix is devoid, or you weed out all of those who have vested interests in what's happening to the rules. And I know we all often say, oh, we're doing all of this for the town and for our people. But you know and I know there's a smidgen of truth to that. But in many, many cases, that doesn't happen. So with that, I would encourage you to move forward, and we're looking forward to some significant changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Room. Anybody else wishing to speak on the topic of the Charter Revision Committee? Yes, in the back. Thank you.
Good evening, Robert Young, 20 Copper Mill Road. In the past, I've made numerous suggestions, but tonight I just have a few, and I'll have more next week or next time. But I think Mr. Rue is correct in the idea of the term limits. I know we have people sitting here who have been here for a long, long time. They get to become a staple, and they're not as sharp as a tack like they should be. So term limits, I think, is extremely important. Mr. Rue mentioned the idea of conflicts of interest, and I mentioned the word nepotism. As we all know, in this town, we have several people on our elected boards that are involved in what I call nepotism. And if you go back to history, you'll notice that way back in the old days of England, where the king hired and kept his family on the payrolls, and they were ruling the countries, the counties and that kind of thing, for the king. And this was that form of nepotism, and everybody had to report up to the family members. But here in town, we have people like Mr. Cassio, who sits on the town council, the Board of Education. His wife works for the town. His daughter works for the town, for the Board of Education. He shouldn't even be allowed to vote. We have now Mr. Forrest, who sits on the Board of Education. Another issue of nepotism, his mother works for the town as a school teacher. And now he's going to be talking about and wheeling and dealing on contracts and budgets, which will affect directly to his mother. And the same goes with Mr. Cassio. And then, of course, we have Mr. Manuso down here, whose wife works for the town as well. And we have Mr. Hurley, whose wife works for the town. And I don't know who else. But I know in the state of Connecticut, anything goes. There is no rules. It happens up at the state capitol. But here in Wethersfield, I really think we should put our foot down. And we should not allow this type of thing to happen. Because as Mr. Rue says, the dollars that they're voting on are going directly to them in some manner. And just think of the spouses that I just mentioned. Another issue I would hope that the town would take would be what's called transparency, and really spell out what we could do with transparency. During this election, for instance, a number of people talked about transparency, putting it up every check that's cut. Within a week or so, it appears on a check register on the website of the town of Weathersfield so people can see it, and it continues to run. It doesn't disappear, it stays. Where people then can go and look and see who's getting paid, how much. There might be some issues that pop up, and that same goes with payroll. That goes with pensions. That goes with everything. That's called transparency. I, for one, purchased from the town, and the manager will agree, I purchased the financial information from the town. I shouldn't have to purchase that. It should be made available on your website. So, and I can go look at it, and I can draw it down into a format that I can work with and do whatever in the world I want with that. You can go to the state of Connecticut, who has a great website for transparency. You can go in and look anywhere within the state of Connecticut, except for except for Yukon, a group that doesn't want anybody to know. We should also have on, and I'll go further later on other issues, but Yukon is one that doesn't participate in transparency. But I purchase it, and I look it over, I study it, I do things with it, and I think it's important that as a citizen, you can go down the list and see all the different vendors and how much everybody is pulling off of the town of Weathersfield. And I really would hope that this commission would consider making that mandatory. Because I've talked about this for a number of years, and I don't really see it happening. So it's going to have to take a push. I also think that we need to do something about, and we've all talked about this in the past, shared services. We need to have that shared services happen. I mean, between the town side and the Board of Education side, there can be consolidations happening, and one manager is running it instead of two. And there's a good cost savings there. So I would hope that we would look at those issues. I'll be back next time to talk about other issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Anybody else wishing to speak on the topic of charter revision? Any last calls for anybody to speak on charter revision? Town manager has one letter. He's going to read into the record on the topic.
Yes, I received a letter from Robert Gaynor. Please present this letter to the town council at the November 18th meeting and to the future Charter Revision Commission. I am unable to attend the November 18th meeting. I propose that the charter include a provision for a referendum for the town's annual budget when it causes a tax increase of 2% or more, and that there be a second referendum if the budget is not approved at the first one. This is consistent with the present provision, which requires a referendum for any expenditure over a given amount. Certainly, the annual budget is far greater than the past additional expenditures, with the exception of the high school renovation. Final approval of the town budget should be directly in the hands of the taxpayers who provide the funds, not just 7 members of the town council. This is nothing new to town government. Many surrounding towns have budget referendums. It provides an important way to control spending, for many officials think the taxpayers have deep pockets. This is far from true, since we are experiencing far greater increases in the cost of living than increases in income, and while many individuals and families are experiencing reductions in income. Thank you, Bob Gaynor, 20 Orchard Hill Drive, town resident for 45 years.
Thank you, Jeff, for reading that. Last call for anybody on the charter revision public hearing. Seeing none, I declare the hearing closed. The next item on the agenda is public comment of general comment. Mr. Miller.
John Miller, 45 Highlands Street. Mayor, members of council, first I want to congratulate all of you new members and returning members, and thank you for the service you give the town. I think the swearing-in session was one of the first. I can't remember missing another one, but I also think the Yukon ladies may have been playing Stanford that night, so I made that decision. I had a couple points I do want to raise. I'm still, particularly with the article in the Rare Reminder, I'm still concerned with the high school tennis courts. We're spending over $400,000, and we're now moving these courts 8 feet. It just seems extravagant. I don't know yet why we're doing it, but I thought the Rare Reminder article had many quotes in there that were, to put it kindly, are misleading. And the expenditure, when you look at tap that with the current article telling us what the deficits are going to be, we've got to start looking at, we just can't be throwing money away. Now, as some of you know, if I feel contrary about something, I hate to see the final word be so distorted. Now, in that Rare Reminder article, you point out, I guess, that the building committee is making a decision. Well, I personally, maybe that's a charter revision thing now that I think of it, I don't think the building committee should make decisions, particularly on big expenditures. I've always thought they were advisory, and the council makes the decision. Now, just the headline, it says you're going back to the original plan. Well, that's not the original plan you had, but that's also not important. I did take the liberty to get one of the best soil engineers I know to make a visual inspection of the courts, and just to see if he by chance agreed with me. The question out there is, whether you rip everything up and move them a short distance, or is there a better way? Can you save a lot of money? Now, in my opinion, and in the opinion of this engineer I had, make a visual inspection. The base is fine. A good check of how the base is out there is what you're using the place for now. Park seems to be serving pretty well as a parking lot. But again, as I've said before, I believe you can put a tack coat on that, then put an 1.5 inch surface court, leave the tennis courts where they are, and have a perfectly good playing surface out there. The engineer I had look at it said, if you do that, in fact, you can play the Davis Cup out there. You're going to have that good a court. What you're doing will never match it. If you do what's planned now, move it, put a new base in there, a large bituminous area. A few years from now, they'll be cracked, because large bituminous areas crack. Now, one of the quotes in that paper is, well, they've been failing for 20 years. These courts will crack. Like many things in this town, you have to maintain them. If you maintain them every few years with just a sealant, everything will be fine. But certainly what you're doing is, at a big cost. And the point that's made in that Rare Reminder article, that to go back and just put this surface course on would cost a lot more. The plans would have to be changed, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't know doing what. You do have, I give you credit, you have one of the best construction management I know of out there, in O&G. I would say they would make the change I've suggested for many months. It's a simple field change. It's not a big deal to do it. We point out planning in zone would be a problem. Can't imagine why it would be a problem. Emergency access is given as a reason that you can't make changes. Well, the emergency access is better now, and which would remain if you don't move the courts, than it's going to be. Because that little roadway you're putting north of the courts, unless emergency equipment is coming in by Segway, that's really not going to work that good. So we point out that as of August, it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to change anything, that we would blow the budget. Well, what's being suggested is saving money. I don't know how you blow a budget saving money. You've got, when you're spending probably $1 million moving the softball, moving the tennis courts, rebuilding them, building that parking on the north side, and talking about that, you would blow a budget. I don't know where it can be coming from. In summary, we're spending $1 million to have the parking at the door for, I guess, teachers, administrators, who else, rather than a short distance away. We're also, in my opinion, you're creating a worse traffic flow than you have. And I would question whether it'll even work. Now, on that score, incidentally, I don't want to embarrass the mayor, but most of what I hear about the school in recent months has been at a coffee shop on Sunday. And a lot of people have said to me, why don't they listen to you? Well, obviously I don't know the answer to that. But yesterday a couple of people came over and said, and they all have their concerns about that project. Why don't they listen to you? And I looked around, I just, not too many tables away, I said, you know the man to talk to? He's sitting right over there, because our new mayor happened to be there. And we did have a little laugh about that after, and he said he'll take care of it, so I'm comfortable with that. But the good news is you still could do this job right, but it has to start with that parking location. You really should take another look, and you should not be spending that kind of money moving these tennis courts. There's no need for it, and it's just, as I say, a big waste. This to me is so reminiscent of that last high school renovation with Catone Field. The committee kept saying, they had their plan, and we kept saying, no, don't do that. There's a better way. Well, they did it their way, and they did it their way again. They did it their way a couple more times. Several years later, we did it right. It cost $1 million. And I hate to see this project go down the same route. The other topic I want to mention, and it's getting too much press to suit me, your situation with the police department. Now, I honestly don't know a lot about it, but I do know that you're dealing with a number of people that, they grew up in this town, they raised their family in this town, they've served the town, and they should be treated right. That's all I would say to it. I'm not offering solutions, but they should be treated right, and it shouldn't go on indefinitely. We've read about this for far too many months, and it's not doing the town any good. Every time there's an article in the paper that, your former police officers are having trouble with the town administration. That's got to be resolved. So that's all I would say to that is, for God's sakes, get it resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Yes, up front. You can come.
Sheila Wells, 336 Hartford Avenue. I'm here as a Weathersfield representative to the Citizens Advisory Council of the MDC. Okay. I'm here as a Weathersfield representative to the Citizens Advisory Council of the MDC to advise the council, town officials, and citizens of an important public hearing that's scheduled for Tuesday, December 3rd. The hearing is required by law as a result of proposed changes to the long-term control plan that was approved by the DEP in 2003 and then modified in 2004. The proposed changes will directly impact the citizens of Weathersfield. Whereas the plan had formerly called for a comprehensive separation of the storm and sewage systems in the south end of Hartford, the MDC is stating that it's too costly to do the complete separation, and they're now proposing instead building underground storage tunnel, which will provide temporary storage of combined sewage overflow, which during large storm events, which can later be pumped out and treated through the plant. Over the past few years, the MDC has made a number of improvements in the sewage system that is helping to clean up the cove. There have been some separation of the storm and sewers. Pipes have been lined and repaired to reduce infiltration. The plant was enlarged to increase the capacity during storm events, and there's a new system added to treat some of the overcapacity with ultraviolet lights, which helps sanitize the sewage before it goes in for some of the overflow. In addition, we've been told that the gates, which were formerly designed to discharge into the cove, have been shut off. Nevertheless, the MD is saying that with the proposed changes, the cove will be protected only up until an 18-year storm. What's not clear to me is whether this is a change in the plan, since I previously understood that the plan for the cove is for zero discharge. A protection to an 18-year storm is more protective of the cove than it is of many other parts of the MDC system, which is protected up to a 1-year storm. But the cove is unique to the MD system. It is a large, relatively static body of water, which is used for recreational purposes and which has been treated as a cesspool in previous years. In case you don't live in Old Weathersfield and you're thinking this doesn't affect you, or you're thinking that the whiners in Old Weathersfield will get what they deserve, I ask you to rethink this position. The Cove is the site of our concerts, our fireworks, our carnival, our farmers market. The Cove is featured prominently in our town seal. Perhaps more significantly, we just voted to approve the largest public works project ever. A month later, the MDC took the plan back to the DEP to propose these substantial changes. We've all seen our water bills rise. They're scheduled to continue to rise substantially through the next decade. In addition to our own water bills, we also pay the MDC through our taxes, the town of Weathersfield, which pays an ad valorem tax to the MDC. Since the MDC is a quasi-municipal agency, we have extremely little to say regarding what kind of stewardship it has with our funds. It behooves us to pay close attention. For example, I noticed a small article in the Current about a month ago stating that the MDC is purchasing another building in downtown Hartford to house its consultants. This is one of the very few times we're going to have an opportunity to speak out and ask questions of the MDC. The long-term control plan is scheduled to be posted by the MDC on their website with additional details about the hearing. The latest information I have is that the hearing is December 3rd at the Maxim Road Training Facility. The sign-ups are at 5:30. There's a 30-minute PowerPoint presentation, 20 to 30-minute PowerPoint presentation by the MDC at 6, which will be followed by opportunity for public comment. In case you don't want to make public comment, or in addition to public comment, you can submit a written statement before, during, or I think it's up to a week after the hearing. The governing statute and the DEP will require the MDC to provide answers to all relevant questions. I hope to see you all there. I invite those people reviewing at home to come, have your voices heard, find out whether zero discharge and an 18-year storm standard mean the same thing, and if not, why not? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Public comment? Mr. Colantoni.
Good evening. Gus Colantonio, 16 Morrison Avenue. Congratulations to all of you, the ones that came back and the new ones. Pleased to see a new council. You know where I'm going, right? Every town meeting is started with the pledge of allegiance to the flag. And the last sentence is, and justice for all, except for the residents of Morrison Avenue. A brief description of Morrison Avenue for the new members of the council. When Morrison Avenue neighborhood was developed back in the 1900s, it was envisioned to be a residential street with minimum traffic, and it was never meant to connect to Silas Deane Highway. Morrison Avenue right-of-way did not connect to Silas Deane Highway before 1955. It was a residential street connecting Tifton Road and Orchard Street. The front setback was set to be 30 feet. 30 feet now. Every other street is about 60, 65. At that time, Morrison Avenue did not have any through traffic from Walcott Hill Road to Silas Deane. Obviously, it did not connect, so it could not have through traffic. As a result of past town decisions, Morrison Avenue now has an average daily traffic of 730 cars. 730 cars a day. Hillcrest Avenue, parallel and adjacent to Morrison Avenue, has an average daily traffic of 365 cars. Keep in mind now, Hillcrest Avenue connected to Silas Deane many years before Morrison Avenue. I will compare the two adjacent streets now. Morrison Avenue is 24 feet wide. Hillcrest Avenue is 30 feet wide. Much safer, right? A wider road. Morrison Avenue has a 3-foot grass strip and a 4-foot sidewalk from Walcott Hill Road to the intersection with Orchard. East of Orchard, the grass strip varies from a no grass strip at all in front of house number 26 and 2 feet on the opposite side, with the remaining about 10 feet to the Silas Dean. Now, Hillcrest Avenue has an average grass strip of 15 feet wide. Here we go again. The distance from the curbing to the front of the houses is 35 feet. From the curbing, 35 feet is the front of my house. In other words, when the window is open, I'm watching TV on the front room. Every time the car goes by, I cannot understand the TV because it's closed. Hillcrest Avenue, on the other hand, the distance is 60 feet from the curbing. And keep in mind that their road is wider. The Connecticut DOT manual on the intersectional side distance recommends 280 feet for 25 miles per hour, and for 30 miles per hour, the recommended distance is 335 feet. Remember these numbers now. The town has taken measurements for the intersectional side distance for Orchard at Hillcrest Avenue and found to be 344 feet to the east and 970 feet to the west, well above the recommended distance of 335 feet for 30 miles per hour. As you can see, the required side distance is more than adequate as you approach Hillcrest Avenue from Orchard. And yet, there are 2 stop signs on Hillcrest Avenue at this intersection. Not on Orchard. On Hillcrest Avenue, there are 2 stop signs. The intersectional side distance from Tifton Road and Morrison Avenue, as measured by the town, the second time around, is 232 feet to the west. 232. Now, the minimum for 25 miles per hour is 280. The town has measured 232 feet. And keep in mind, the grade is going down, so it's a little bit harder to stop if you have to stop. And having only 232 feet, I don't think is enough. The distance does not meet the minimum recommended distance for 25 miles per hour. And yet, the 85th percentile speed on Morrison Avenue is 31 miles per hour. The posted speed is 25. And the police says that there is nothing wrong with that. In other words, 85% of the people are breaking the law, and it's okay for the police department. The intersection side distance on Orchard and Morrison Avenue looking east is 290 feet. And this is the reason for the stop sign. We have 290 feet, we have a stop sign, we need one. Again, 290 feet side distance needs a stop sign, but for 232 feet on Tifton, you do not need it? What's going on? The most unsafe location on Morrison Avenue is between Orchard and Tifton, less than 200 feet apart. To the south, the sidewalk is adjacent to the road with a mountable curbing. To the north, the separation between the curb and sidewalk is only 2 feet. There are no handicap ramps on Tifton Road connecting to the north side of Morrison Avenue. The reason for this is because the town does not want to encourage crossing in this area because it's unsafe. That's what the town engineer has said, because it's unsafe, but safe enough not to require a stop sign. Frankly, I do not understand the logic on this. I want to quote Lieutenant Power memo to Chief Sertran, dated April 25th, 2007. See how far back we go? This is 2013, and you think I'm going to give up? No. Where he explained the 85th percentile speed. This speed indicates the speed that most motorists on the road consider safe and reasonable under ideal conditions. This statement tells me that the average motorist goes at 31 miles per hour, thinking that that's safe without knowing that the side distance of the intersection is less than desirable. and it does not meet the Connecticut standards. Now, if something happens in this area, an accident, and I've been here so many times, can the town really protect it or defend the decision of not putting a stop sign there? I don't think so. To my knowledge, the only place in town where the stop signs are located in one direction and not the other are at Walker Hill Road in the vicinity of Bliss Market, Main Street and Hartford Avenue, and Morrison Avenue and Orchard Street. At Walker Hill Road and Main Street, just below the sign, there is an additional sign stating, oncoming cars do not stop. Do we need a similar sign on Morrison Avenue? After attending many meetings, I have come to the conclusion that the town is non-responsive and it does not care to the fairness, justice for all, and the quality of life of the residents. The stop sign on Hillcrest Avenue and the lack of a stop sign on Morrison Avenue in the easterly direction is the reason why the average daily traffic on Morrison Avenue is double than the average daily traffic on Hillcrest Avenue. I'm going to ask again, if any of you lived on Morrison Avenue, would the town install a stop sign? I think it would. But because I'm one of the little peons out here, that's not going to happen. But anyway, thank you for allowing me to express my opinion one more time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colantonio. Anybody else wishing to speak? Mr. Young?
Good evening again, Robert Young, 20 Copper Mill Road. Mr. Colantonio has been making a similar request for quite a while. I would hope that you would find somewhere in your budget to give him a couple of signs on his street. You know, he talked about Hillcrest. It appears they have a couple signs there to slow traffic down, and they have about half the traffic coming through from what's going through his street without any signs. Give it a try. What do you got to lose? A couple signs? It might work and slow things down. Next, we just had an election, and looking at the numbers, it appears that the highest vote getter in town got, out of the entire group of people that could vote, 17,272, the highest vote getter got 14.3 or 14.4 of the entire votes. I know, Mayor, I saw something in the paper where you mentioned it's about the poor voter turnout. And this is extremely poor, yet it's common in this town. And why? Your guess is as good as mine. I mean, I have my ideas, you got yours, but it's too bad people don't come out and vote. Because 85%, the highest vote getter, was turned down by 85% of our citizens. They all could have come in and voted for him, but they didn't. And that was a very huge amount of people that didn't come out and vote. It's too bad. Because the more they sit back and don't do anything, the less they can complain. Well, at least I can complain, and I come down here and you hear about it. And, you know, in the newspaper the other day, and I've been warning you folks for a long time about holding costs down, which you haven't done. And now the state of Connecticut is looking at a huge budget deficit in the year 2000, starting around July 2015, right after the the election for governor. And this is going to go on for a couple more years. And, you know, we've already gone through some bad times dollar-wise. The state has been borrowing up the yin-yang to hold themselves together, which was wrong, in my opinion. They should have let things go and reduced their head count up at the state capitol. But they didn't. But what's happening, from what the article indicates, is that the new projections of that $1.1 billion deficit is because it's based on the assumption that state employees will receive an average annual raise of 4.6%, 4.5%, and 4.4% over the 3 years starting in 2016. That's pretty good raises considering all the poor raises that we've been hearing about and seeing over the last, since 2009, 2010, 2009, I guess, when this recession started. They also talk about the deficit it was also projected that medical costs were going to increase by 6.2%, and 6.2% and 5.4% for 2016, 17, and 18. They got to get some money. Real money, not borrowed money. They need to get some real money. And the only way they're going to get it is they're going to be taking from the towns. Because these are on contracts. These are labor contracts that they can't really push off or ignore. And we need to be ready for all of that. We should have been ready a long time ago, but I don't think we have been. But we need to look at reducing. We need to look at our school population is on the decrease. And why? Because the state of Connecticut is putting in academies and magnet schools, and they're pulling kids out of our schools and they're going over there. And as I've said in the past, we're going to have in time an overabundance amount of empty buildings, or buildings that are only half full or somewhat less than acceptable as far as occupancy goes. And we should maybe be considering dumping, mothballing one of our elementary schools, because times are going to get tougher. Don't think they're going to get easier. If these people are going to get these, and of course this article goes on and talks about the teachers are going to be getting some raises too. That must be the teachers at the magnet schools and those academies and whatever that are financed by CREC. And look at how they spend money. They couldn't care less. Buy a CLMP building and then leave $2 million, the seller of the building leaves $2 million on the table. That's a joke. I know you got it, but that means the state of Connecticut overpaid tremendously to those sellers. But keep it quiet, because it was all borrowed money, and hopefully nobody will pay any attention. But it's noticed. And it's just too bad that this whole state is just getting ready and has been ready to go down the tubes. We're looking at a couple communities that aren't doing very well, like Bridgeport and a couple others that could go bankrupt. And that means with the way the governor is, he would bail them out. I say don't bail them out. Let them go. Let the citizens worry about it. If they were asleep at the wheel and they let their government go to spend all the money that they didn't have, that's their problem. Shouldn't be our problem. We constantly have a problem with the state of Connecticut, funding schools all over the state, funding this and funding that. I know Miss Sheila Wells talked tonight about the MDC, a meeting that they held last week, where depends on the size of the pipe that goes into the building that's going to be the rate of the increase, or what, that's how they're rating it. I don't think they're going to be bothering the residential people from what I saw, but and I didn't go to that meeting, but I haven't also read it in the newspaper. I read it somewhere else. But it appears as though we're going to be looking at quite an increase coming from the MDC on our water bill, or whatever we pay for them going into these next budgets. I hope our people were there screaming, not to do anything, not to increase anything. The citizens of this region just gave them how many billion dollars to do a job with the sewers. And now here they are right away. They want more money. They found out it was easy to get $2.1 billion passed. Now what's another little passing of more money? But we're in deep trouble. I don't know where it's going to end, but we could go along with Bridgeport. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Other public comment? Seeing none, We'll move on to council reports. Tony?
Tuesday of last week, I was at the EDIC meeting, and one of the suggestions that we brought forward was to look to have the town planner go to Central to see about getting an intern from there for academic credit, not for pay, to help us over the Christmas break to update our list of available properties in town, and maybe take some pictures, and then afterwards we could, once that was updated, get together with some of the local commercial brokers to see what we could do to fill those stores. So the commission was very receptive to that, so Peter will be looking into that. And 2 dates to remember, and I'm sure Peter will bring it up with the rest of his report later. December 5th will be the holidays on Main, and December 12th will be the salute to business in town at the Weathersfield Country Club.
Thank you, Counselor. Other council reports? See none. Counselor comment? Any counselor comment? Counselor Cott?
All right. I just want to sort of apologize to the residents of the town and also the council. I was away for work for 4 days last week, so I was unable to be here to be sworn in. So Dolores swore me in earlier, and very much looking forward to serving with the other 8 members of the council, as well as serving with the 9 members of the board, and serving the town of Weathersfield that has honored me by electing me to the council for a 5th term. The last 4 years has been a pleasure to serve with Mayor Hemmen. She was very fair, very equitable to all members of the council at all time. And I really look forward to serving under Mayor Montanari now. I think, Paul, you're going to bring intelligence, honesty, humor, patience, and an uncanny ability to bring disparate parties together over the next 2 years. So I think this is going to be a good council. We're going to all work together, and I look forward to the next 2 years. So thank you for my 30 seconds.
Thanks, Jeff. We missed you the other night. Any other counselor comments? Town manager report? Jeff?
Couple things. I want to apologize to the Weathersfield Volunteer Fire Department. I was unable to make their memorial dedication last Sunday or the Sunday prior, but congratulations on that memorial. It's a terrific honor to the past 210 years of service for that fire department to the community. So congratulations. Also, on a fire topic, we did receive the two bids for the new fire truck. We'll be putting together a public safety committee to review those bids with the fire department as soon as we can. And we'll be soliciting, we're going it back out for recruiting for the finance director. So with a heavy emphasis on accounting and perhaps CPA. That's it.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. Dolores? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, yeah.
Dolores, anything?
No, the election's over.
Thanks, Dolores. I think everybody at the Godias is happy about that. Okay, on to Counselor action. B1A, acceptance of resignations from boards and commissions. Counselor Hemmen.
We have some resignations from the Ethics Board, Jody Latina, 29 Blueberry Hill, and that's effective 11/18/2013. From the Weathersfield Historic District Commission, Michael Rell, 57 Broad Street, also effective 11/18. Zoning Board of Appeals, Mark Rudowitz, 6 Trimber Trail, effective 10/28/13.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Note that 2 of those resignations are a result of election to the board and the council, so we welcome them. Thank them for their work previously. I'm sure they're going to do some great work in their new positions. Jerry?
Resignation from the Weathersfield High School Hamner Building Committee, Stephen Berry, 124 Black Birch Road, effective November 18th, 2013.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you, Steve, for your contributions there. Same good result. Moving on.
Thank you.
And Deputy Mayor?
Motion to accept a resignation
Appointment, actually.
from the
It's an appointment.
an appointment, I'm sorry, to the, as library liaison, Elaine Zeiler. Elaine Zeiler as library liaison.
Let's give the date.
From 11/18/2013 to June 30, 2015.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. B1C, resolution establishing a charter revision commission.
I move to approve the resolution establishing a charter revision commission.
Second.
Thank you. Town manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll ask the town clerk to chime in on this as she sees fit. This is a resolution that begins the charter revision process as the charter requires us to review this every 10 years. I've received a handful of people interested in serving on the commission, and as I stated in my memo, probably the council should put together a subcommittee or an ad hoc committee to review those and make recommendations to the group within 30 days of establishing that commission. I've also spoken to the town attorney, and they have attorneys experienced in the charter revision process that can staff this committee and give them what they need legally and legal support over the next year or so in the revision process.
Thank you very much. Any counselor comment on the charter revision? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Moving on to unfinished business, 2A, Mitchell in the Park.
I move for approval of consent to sublease for the leasing of space on the roof of Mitchell on the Park Senior Housing Apartments at 226 Prospect Street as submitted.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. A month or so ago, we were approached by the owners of the Mitchell on the Park apartment complex with a request to amend the lease with the town to allow them to put a 14 to 15-foot cell tower on the roof. We requested additional information. They requested additional time to give us more information, and that's been provided in a series of financial analysis of the tower, plus some photometrics on what it would look like on top of the tower. Representatives of the building and their attorneys are here this evening to answer any particular questions.
Thank you. Jeff, any questions from the council on this motion?
Maybe it would be helpful, I think some of our questions the last time were what the financial benefits to the town were, so maybe we could go through those a little bit for the residents.
Okay. The straight-up property tax on the tower itself, just the tower without the different arrays, the assessor estimates that's got a taxable value about $30,000, or excuse me, $6,000. That's the taxes we would receive. As part of our lease with Mitchell on the Park, the town receives a portion of any net revenue above certain operating costs. So their lease with Verizon would be included into that calculation of net revenue. So we would receive a portion of that if their net revenues were over that threshold of operating expenses. And as you can see, they've really not met that threshold for the past several years due to the economy and so forth. So there's a couple of avenues there for the town to see additional revenue from the placement of the tower. The personal property tax from the individual carrier would be very dependent upon the type and style of array, so the assessor did not have an estimate on the personal property taxes from the carrier themselves.
Okay. And if I could just add, Jeff, you may not be able to answer this question, but this will be a Verizon wireless tower.
That's my understanding of Verizon.
That'll be up. And is there, I assume Verizon wants to put it up because there's some zones in town perhaps that could use better service. Will this improve the wireless service for Verizon wireless residents in town?
I believe the applicant could probably answer that better than I could.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. My name is, members of the council, I'm Ken Baldwin with Robinson and Cole on behalf of Verizon Wireless. Quick answer to your question, yes. There are some significant gaps in service in that part of town that this will take care of nicely.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions or comments?
Yeah, Jeff, what is the threshold for the additional revenue to the town? When does that kick in?
It's 10% of net rent after expenses are deducted out. So it reads, net income shall be defined as revenues generated from the use of the premises and the building located on the premises, less maintenance, landscaping, reasonable management fees, and operational costs. And every year we get a certified report from the auditors of the building owner with that calculation. So,
Well, those audited reports are just general reports that come from their accountant, or?
come from their auditor, from their CPA firm.
So is there a reason why then that in the last few years there hasn't been any? I'm sorry? Oh, sorry, George. So is there a reason why over the past few years then we haven't seen any revenue kickers from that?
On the rent side, because they've operated in a net loss position.
Okay. So is that because revenues were low or because expenses had gone up, or both?
Yes.
All right, so I mean, I guess what I'm getting at, is this the best deal we're gonna get? 30,000 in additional,
Well, we're not gonna
Rental.
see that. They're gonna see, that's the estimated rent to the property owner, which
Right.
be included in the net rent calculation.
right, unless we amend this and
Well, if you,
ask for something different.
well, you'd have to amend the base lease, not the consent to sublease. Because the base lease contains the rent provisions. And we just amended those, we just amended the base lease a year ago to extend the term and further define the taxable status of the property.
Right, I remember. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Stop. Any other questions? I think, you know, before we go, it should be noted that this group has spent some time on the depictions to get visual impacts to a minimum. They have come back, appreciate them coming back after a slight delay, but I'm trying to assure the town with some of the visuals, which I think were a question, and P&Z obviously did approve that. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes.
Just one comment for the public. According to the sublease, they will have to go back through any regulatory body, so they'll go back to planning and zoning and the state siting council if necessary. So they'll be, this isn't the final decision. This is just allows them to pursue that course.
Thank you, Jeff, for that clarification for the public. Very good.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for. 3A, there's a presentation by Connecticut Light and Power regarding the completing the tree trimming program in various locations in town.
Mayor, because I work for an affiliate of Connecticut Light and Power, I'm going to step away.
Thank you, Jeff.
Mr. Mayor and council, on your podium this evening is a map with some highlighted streets, which is probably what we'll be discussing from this evening. So Jack Arcego with CLMP is here this evening to begin this conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Bridges, and thank you to the town council for inviting us back here tonight to talk to you and give you a presentation. With us tonight is David Goodson, who is our manager of our vegetation management department. He spoke to the group the last time, as well as Barry Croak, who is our senior arborist. David is going to give you a presentation and answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, and thank you for having me here, Mr. Mayor and council. Since our last meeting here, we've had several subsequent meetings and developed a plan that I'm going to present to you this evening. First of all, we met with the town tree committee and agreed to remove 4 to 5 trees on the town green and replace those next spring with what we'll call right tree, right place. These are trees that will be compatible with the green and with the power lines. The planting will take place in April, probably, and hopefully right around Arbor Day. Our arborist, Barry Croak, and your tree warden, Phil Smithwick, have reviewed those sections of town where we need to complete our work, and those you see on the map that's been provided to you. Though that map is color-coded with the type of work we plan to do, and I believe there's a key on the bottom down here, and I'll explain very briefly what that key means. ETT stands for Enhanced Tree Trimming, and that's on sections of line that are where we will, our goal is to remove all overhanging limbs and also get trees that are in poor shape removed. The RBB, the blue, is what we call a reclaimed backbone. If you recall, the backbone of our electric system is a key component of the system because all of the lines that you see around it, all those smaller roads, the lines in yellow are fed off of the backbone. And our goal there is to remove overhanging limbs and also to remove trees that are at risk because of their condition. And lastly, the SMT, the yellow, is routine maintenance where we get a clearance of 8 feet to the side, 10 feet below, and 15 feet overhead. All of this work will be performed under the following terms. We have and will continue to work under a permit of the tree warden. We will notify all abutting property owners of the proposed work. This includes re-notifying people that we have already notified. We're going to go out and reestablish that communication. Both Barry Croak and Phil Smithwick will meet with the crews before we restart to set expectations, outline what their expectations are on a daily basis, and then they will both be providing oversight for those crews throughout the project, which we expect to complete by the end of this year. That's the plan as we have it today.
Questions for Donna?
You talked about oversight of the crews. I know in the past, there were several other areas in the surrounding area where the arborist was going back and forth between all the areas,
Yes.
overseeing. Will there be a consistent mechanism for that oversight? Will that arborist be in town when those the crews are trimming those trees? Or again, is that a similar situation?
I mean, it's similar. He goes from town to town throughout the greater Hartford area. He doesn't spend all of his time in Weathersfield, but those crews also have what we call a general foreman supervisor that goes around to those crews, as well as I'll say a quasi-supervisor. The person that does the notification goes out and meets with the crews and communicates back and forth what the homeowner's expectations are for abutting homeowners, as well as your tree warden being out there.
Go ahead, Steve.
You mentioned notice to the abutting landowners. How much notice are you going to give them, and how are you going to notify the homeowners?
The plan for re-notification is door to door.
And how far in advance before you start are you going to be notifying these people?
I'm going to say a very short time now because we're closing in on the end of the year. We'll start notifying as soon as, where's Barry?
They've actually already started.
Okay,
It's just a re-notification, just to remind people.
And is there a process in place if folks aren't home or you don't actually speak to them personally?
Yes, we
What's the
have what we
process?
call a door hanger, which we leave on the door. But because the state statutes require us to provide notification, we won't do the work until we provide that notification.
Dave, you talked a little bit about the process and the descriptions that you gave. One of the things that I recall when you were here last time, several months ago, and I think was somewhat reflective of the out-of-states crews that were left to kind of conduct their business without necessarily intervention or oversight, and you've addressed that tonight. But there was also, and this is sort of subjective, but one of the things that we heard pretty significantly from residents, particularly in the green area, is that the work was done so aggressively without any real care about, the appearance at the end was very striking as opposed to perhaps a little bit. Has that been discussed? Is there any thought about how we can ensure that residents aren't going to be shocked by the extent of the cutting. I know you're doing the door-to-door, but maybe you can address that.
Yeah, and that is part of the pre-restart meeting with the crews, to make sure they fully understand what the expectations are in Weathersfield, and to point out those properties where we will not get what we call our full clearance. If there's an objection by either the tree warden or an abutter, to make sure that they understand that on this particular tree, you have to go light.
That's helpful. And then one other point, the Broad Street Green particularly was the source of some real contentious reaction. And I think you identified, you said 5 trees that are going to come out on the green?
We've identified 4 to 5.
4.
Yes.
And
4
are
or
those
5.
going to be marked in advance so that at least the public will be made aware of it? I'm also thinking simultaneously, could you identify where the other ones are going to be planted in some fashion so people can see visually, these are coming down, here's where we're going to plant the number, so at least people can get.
And if I might interrupt, as they said, we met with the tree commission. And the Village Improvement Association is going to kind of run this process for the community. They'll hold some public meetings with the stakeholders around the green, so to help pick variety and placement. So we'll have some public sessions on this over the wintertime and be prepared for planting in the spring. So the specifics aren't worked out, but there is 4 to 5 trees that are likely to come out and be replaced with different species based upon those meetings with the stakeholders.
And so they might be a little bit later. That process might be a little later so that you have time to do that, it
Yes.
sounds like.
Yeah,
I think
and hopefully, not only the tree commission, but getting other folks involved, like the Cub Scouts and the Boy Scouts that were here. And so we could have a public showing on the green when those trees go in around Arbor Day.
Yeah, I think the trees going in part is obviously very positive. Not going to be too many people object to that, but I think the transition, and we saw that because I think many residents felt like the communication level wasn't 100% up to snuff, and I think participation by the town, and I suspect the town manager, Jeff, will head that up, but I do think we need to have it at the very initial process over the next few weeks when you really get going again. I think it would be very good to have some town staff there, visible, and so residents can respond and we can show that we're paying attention to it, because that's obviously a big part of it. The process itself is understood, I think, as a requirement, but I still am concerned that residents are going to see some of this going on, whether they pay attention or they see the articles or they're paying attention to this hearing. Many of them won't. Crews will show up, the cutting will start, and there'll be probably some reaction. So I think it's real important that we have some visible staff as well as your folks.
Do you find that they will react by calling town offices, or do you think they'll call CLMP first?
I think they'll call town offices. I think they'll go to Jeff.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think that's important, that we
So-
preemptively stay prepared for that and don't
Yeah.
disappear when it starts, kind of thing.
Well, if I might, Mr. Mayor, one of the important things we found last time, CLMP may have come to an agreement with a particular property owner, and they were fine with what was happening, whether the tree was fully removed or cut back. We got into some situations where the neighbors didn't like what was going on that particular tree, so you had some of those issues going on too. So we'll do the best we can to work through that, but some people may not be happy with the aesthetic, but may not be particular owners of a tree.
Well, one of the things I'm thinking about that is that the owners of the property should probably take some initiative to talk with their neighbors and give them a heads up so they're aware too. So, I mean, I'm sure you can't get everybody happy on this no matter what happens, but, I do appreciate that you've come back with a solid plan. I know there's been a lot of concern in town when it occurred. I think particularly the aggressive thing, I think that's a big thing. If the work can be done, I think it's, again, subjective, but if these workers come through and I think maybe do their work with just a little heightened sensitivity about the aggressive cutting. This measurement thing I think is pretty clear as a rule, but it seemed like they went a little bit beyond that, I think, initially, which really alarmed some folks. But we do appreciate your back and working on it. Donna?
I just want to follow up. Deputy Mayor asked the question about the notification, and you talked about door hangers, and he asked about if people were not home. If people are not home during the day because they're at work or they're, just happen not to be home, are you going to wait until there's a response? Is there a time frame related to getting that notification and being able to respond? Or the notification is clear that it's there and they didn't know and they come home and see that work has been done?
No, the notification, usually, we have a 15-day waiting period.
Okay.
We may cut that maybe in half, but it's not going to be an overnight type of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
If I might too, so is there something on the hangar that actually says we'll be back at this date to commence the work?
We don't give an exact date, we give a window.
Okay.
Other comments, concerns? Jerry?
When you say the end of the year, you mean 2013?
Yes,
So this will be done in approximately 6 weeks?
that's what we're hoping, yes.
Okay.
Okay, I think we've gotten a good update. Thank you for coming back. We
Thank you for having
appreciate it. Good luck out there. I'd say stay around during the cutting process for the fun. We have an economic development report, 3B. Peter, thank you for coming. Good to see you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, councilors, new and old, and of course, Town Manager Bridges. You should have received in your packet, and I did see the online version report dated November of this year. I'll just quickly walk through that, and if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer it. In terms of projects that are going on, and the Correct Magnet School, if you've been by Cumberland Avenue, the demolition portion of that project is well underway, if not completed yet. Getting ready to start the construction phase of that very shortly. So if you haven't been by there, please do that. They do have an online camera that you can go and check out the progress. If you're interested, let me know and I'll give you the connection for that. We're still waiting for the state approval for the Art Institute of Connecticut in the Putnam Park office building. I know the town manager has inquired as to what is going on with that permit, but we are still in a holding pattern for that. The owners of the building as well as the Art Institute have invested heavily in the building, and we're hopeful that those permits will be released very shortly so that school can open. In terms of new businesses, I did provide you with a list of about 7 businesses that have opened over the last month or two. You may have also noticed the Hartford Hospital building at 1260 Silas Deane Highway. The addition for that building is well underway. The framing is nearly complete, so you'll see significant progress on that very shortly. And then lastly, at the last Historic District Commission meeting, the plans for the renovation and additions to the former Masonic Hall on Main Street were approved. They still have to go through the planning and zoning process. They'll probably do that in December. So you should see progress on the renovation of that building very shortly. If you're interested, feel free to let me know and I'll forward to you the details. But the exterior renovations alone are pretty significant to that building, and we'll bring that building back to a nice appearance befitting the historic district area of town. In terms of Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, something we probably will be coming back to the council to discuss, but we want to form some type of implementation subcommittee for the recently adopted Plan of Conservation and Development. That subcommittee will include representatives from various boards and commissions. We would like to see someone from the council on that. Obviously, the town manager and other department heads will be heavily involved in that, but so we're just beginning the discussion stages of that. I think we would like the council maybe to be the appointing authority for that. So we'll be back in touch to talk about that. The Planning and Zoning Commission has also recently approved a couple of projects that you should be aware about. Goffbrook Shops, they approved a Buffalo Wild Wings franchise to go into the former buffet space at the end of the Goffbrook Shops. Additionally, they approved a new outbuilding in the parking lot on the south side of the center. It's a franchise, a Connecticut franchise called Chips. It's a family restaurant concept. So that construction is expected to be underway during the wintertime, and they're hopeful to open in the spring. Additionally, you may have seen some information in the newspaper. The issue of medical marijuana is being discussed at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. The commission feels that we need to take some level of position from a regulatory point of view, so we're discussing that right now. Some type of regulation so that we have a policy as to what our position is if someone does come to town and wants to open up either a production facility or a dispensary. So we're having that debate right now as we speak. A couple of other things that have recently been approved by the commission, a new church up on Russell Road, and then a small home occupation on Griswold. The facade program, for those of you who are aware of that, is still pretty active and pretty busy. Over the last month or so, we've had 3 different applications. We've either closed or agreed to submit additional funding on that. That pot of money for the facade program is beginning to dwindle down. We did ask for some state assistance last time around through the STEEP program, which was not approved. We are hopeful that we will be applying again to the state for some money, but if the state doesn't come through, there is a possibility that that pot of money will dry up probably at some point early next year. So at least on the capital improvement program side of it, we will be asking for some money in that program again. Tony Martino made you aware, but on December 12th at the Country Club, the annual Salute to Business will be held. We would love to see as many counselors in attendance as possible. So please mark that on your calendar. I believe it starts at 5:30 in the evening, so that's December 12th. We're finishing up the town guide and calendar for next year. In terms of the council impact, we typically do have a message from the mayor included in that. So in terms of your list of things to do, if you don't have a long list already, we typically ask for a statement from the mayor and then maybe a preview of things that you hope to come in the near future. Tourism Commission remains pretty busy in terms of their activity. They've placed some advertising in AAA Journeys magazine. I do have an agenda item right after this we'll talk about regarding the Heritage Trail. We just received all the submissions for this year's community photo contest. We received over 200 photos. So we're going through the process of judging those, and probably we'll have some sort of decision next week. And then lastly, you may have seen in the Boston Globe on October 30th, there was a nice tourism article about the community. So we assisted the travel writer when she came to town for that. So I'd be happy to answer many of your questions.
Thank you, Peter. Questions from councilors for Pete? Yes, Donna?
Peter, we've been through the process with the facade loan program in looking at the Railroad Place location. I know that there was we'd asked the question back when the new owner took that over. Was that all reconciled with the sale and then now resale?
Yeah, the program is set up like a loan, but we don't take a traditional monthly payment. If the property does sell within the 10-year loan period, they have to pay us back, and in that situation, they paid us everything back, so they fully refunded the program.
Okay, and those trees were replaced? Remember the trees that had been taken down inadvertently, or?
They weren't factored into the facade program? Oh, you're talking about in the back?
Yeah.
I believe they were. I haven't monitored that recently and haven't received any complaints, but there were some evergreen screens, I think is what you're talking about in the back, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Donna. Other questions? Yeah, Mike.
Peter, nice to finally meet you. I've heard
Yes.
very good remarks about you.
Nice to meet you,
You're doing a great job. I did have a question. Having served on the Historic District Commission in the past, the Masonic Temple, or the Masonic Home, or building on Main Street, I guess going back a little bit to the trees as well, is there any talk about parking in the front? I'm sorry I didn't sit in on the last HDC meeting. But there was concern about parking in the front. I don't know if any of that has been rectified.
They are proposing their own parking off-site. They're also proposing an addition with a garage. So in terms of their demand, I think it'll be addressed. We are hopefully soon about to embark on the redesign of the Main and Church Street intersection. That concept plan has some additional parking that we think can be added to the intersection, both on Church Street as well as potentially on Main Street. So we're going to be looking at that to see if we can add to what's there now.
Okay.
I think that'll be dependent on how the public process goes, and we'll have to look at the safety and sightline and all of that, but there's hope that a couple of additional spaces could be added.
There will be opportunity for the public to speak?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Peter, I have a couple of things. Sorry, Jerry, go ahead. I'll let you go.
The Chips Restaurant, is that from down near the shoreline?
Yes, they're in Fairfield, Trumbull, I'm trying to think of the third community, but.
Branford, Clinton?
I don't know about Clinton,
New
probably,
Haven,
maybe
maybe?
Branford?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
same folks.
And the church on Russell Road, what property is that?
There are a couple of single-family homes on Russell Road, right across from the Toll Brothers property. It's a vacant lot there.
That wasn't state property?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Peter, the Church in Maine discussion that you just referenced, there is a committee, I assume, looking at that?
We haven't started that process. The funding for that is coming from the STEEP grant. That STEEP grant had a couple of different projects in it. One of those projects, we're still waiting for the paperwork and the documentation and all of that. Mike Turner did solicit some proposals from engineering firms to help us with that process, but we have not started that. We have not discussed, whether a committee would be formed, so there's still plenty of time to discuss that.
And what are you thinking the time frame will be, looking at it outrange? Is it 6 months, 9 months from now?
I think there's a couple of concepts that are already developed, so I think the engineer's work is going to be, helped by that significantly. I think it's really all dependent on how much public input you want to put into that process in terms of how long the time would be. I would think the paperwork for the state grant should be resolved shortly. So the planning, I would hope, would go forward through the wintertime.
I would think, just to say, I would imagine that I would recommend, I think other councils would agree, more than less on the public input. That's one that I think catches a lot of attention. It's an area that's obviously critical to our historic district. Almost all of our historic district events happen around that area. I've heard everything from people in favor of, traffic medians to hating traffic medians. So I think that could be something that we want to make sure we really, really make an effort to get some public input on. It's a pretty big deal. So I think folks would agree on that. On a different note, I still continue to hear a lot about this, and I think we discussed this with you briefly some months ago about relative to design review and the pawn shop over on Salas Dean. People seem to continue to be concerned about the amount of window space that is covered with advertising, which I think is probably in conflict with our design review requirements, and also the amount of retail business that seems to be spilling out into the driveway, creating what I think is a very unattractive appearance in an area that's pretty important to us as we look at the town. Could you just address that for a minute and give me a sense of what we can and can't do?
Sure. I did receive a couple of complaints. I think a couple of counselors and I have talked about that. We did investigate the work that they had done recently, and although it appears they did a whole new facade, they simply repainted the building and the signage. The color leaves a lot to be desired. We do not regulate color during the design review process, so that went through without the need for our approval. In terms of the window signage, we do allow, it's a zoning issue more than a design review issue. We allow 25% window signage for all businesses. I can't say that that's monitored and calculated on a regular basis for all businesses, so certainly it's probably something we can look at from a zoning point of view. In terms of the outside, I did speak directly to the manager of the space, and for the last 3 or 4 weeks, all of that outside material, we directed them to bring it all inside. They did not have a license for that, so the space has been cleaned up, at least from that perspective. So
let's just go back to the 25%. I mean, clearly it's well past 25%, just visual. So is it require a complaint for us to further into?
I think no, today it's obviously, I'm aware of it now. I'll pass it on to the building department and have the zoning officer pay them a visit and do some quick analysis and see where we're at.
I think that'd be prudent. I mean, I think we don't want to be, necessarily unbusiness friendly to them. I'm sure they're a successful business. They're obviously quite busy, but the cosmetics and the appearance is definitely troubling. And if we do have something within design review, I think we should enforce it and be fairly vigilant. Thank you.
Sure.
Jeff?
Peter, just a quick question. The Hartford Hospital office facility or medical facility addition, Do you know how many square feet that is and what the approximate cost is?
Not off the top of my head. I can certainly get that for you. It's a substantial addition for them. We went through a pretty complicated review process in terms of available parking, what they were losing, and lot coverage. They had to actually get some variances because it didn't meet all of our requirements. So I think the commissions were pretty flexible with them, and hopefully the plan that they've come up with will, it is a busy site, so we spent a lot of time. They added parking along the back and also behind Liberty Bank and the laser eye surgery building. So we think at the end of the day, if they controlled where their employees park, it should be good. But I can certainly.
Yeah, if you could just give a little summary of
Sure.
of it, that would be great.
Jared?
Yeah, maybe, just getting back to the pawn shop, maybe we need to look at adding color to an area of regulation. I mean,
Yeah,
you could have neon purple, you could have fuchsia, you could have some stuff that really looks pretty garish.
Yeah, that's a dicey one to regulate, but it's certain, we are just, and there will be an opportunity maybe to discuss that, but we do have a little bit of money to come up with a set of more detailed design review standards. So there's maybe a way of working something into the regulations regarding additional aspects of design review that we should be thinking about. So, but regulating color has always been that's a tough one. Even the historic district doesn't regulate color. But I can certainly take it back to them for discussion and see where we come out.
Thank you.
Other comments, thoughts? Peter, thank you for
Sure,
coming.
sure.
Appreciate that. I'm sure we'll see you at the Salute to Business next month. And yes, we're going to move on to an agenda that keeps you at the podium.
Sure, and I have with me on that agenda item Chris Trazik, who is the chair of the Tourism Commission, as this project is being pushed by the Tourism Commission. So she's here to assist me.
Thank you. Under B3C, interpretive trail grant motion.
Good evening, Council.
1 second, Chris. We're just going to introduce the motion if we could.
I'll make a motion to accept a grant of $17,500 from the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving and a $35,000 Connecticut Humanities grant for the manufacture and installation of interpretive and village center signs in Old Weathersfield.
Second.
Thank you. Now, Chris, you have the podium. Nice to see you, by the way.
Thank you. Nice to see you, too. So these two grants are actually an initiative of the Tourism Commission. They actually tie in with the STEEP grant that the Planning Department applied for some of the changes to the Main Street intersection, as well as the Vibrant Community Grants, which was just completed, which was to talk about adaptive reuse. We had an opportunity in the last year to really tie a number of those grants together to really further the master plan that was put together under the Preserve America grant that the town received. So this is the latest phase of it, which was to develop the interpretive trail, and the funding from the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving is really to do the design work, and then the Connecticut Humanities is to actually do the manufacture and installation of that signage. It'll go a long way to making the town of Weathersfield, especially Old Weathersfield, part of the tourism attraction. We've really never had the funding to be able to talk about our history and have that available for the public. And in particular, the kiosk, which will give information to visitors as they're coming in, will address some of the complaints that we've had about visitors coming after hours on the weekends when the Keeney Center isn't necessarily open and they can't get any of the information. So we urge the council to accept the two grants.
Thank you, Chris. Nice work. Questions from the councilors? Mike?
Thank you, Chris. These signs, would they look similar to the newer signs that have been installed in Old Weathersfield and around town?
The directional signage, the wayfinding signage, actually, they will not. These are interpretive signs, so there are some fairly standard rules that you have to comply with in terms of how those signs are built and what they look like. There is one in front of Lucky Lou's, which will give you an idea. So it's about this wide, actually, on a slight angle. So it's wheelchair accessible, it's easy for people to read, and it really gives you little snippets of history or a little piece of what's happening at that particular building, you know,
Great.
what the history of that was.
Okay. Thank you.
Chris, you mentioned the kiosk. Where will that be?
Final location has not been determined yet. We are probably looking at doing one right either by the Keeney or Webdean Stevens. Final location hasn't been determined because that's really where people are going to go initially. So you want them to start there and then
Branch out.
send them out throughout.
And one of the kiosks will have at least a map of the historic district. Phil Lohman, we've recruited Phil to be our artist on these and use some of his map-making skills throughout this project. So there's likely to be a large kiosk, as Chris mentioned, in addition to those locations, probably down at Weathersfield Cove, and then on one more area yet to be determined. We have a stakeholders group that will be formed who will all have input in this, as well as significant contributions from the Historical Society and the Webdean Stevens Museum.
Any other questions?
So these are just static kiosks, not interactive?
Right.
No connection, okay.
Chris, thank you very much. Tourism has been doing some great work on this, I know, for quite some time. Getting that grant was a nice achievement. We thank you. We have a motion on the table and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you, Chris and Peter. Appreciate that. Next item up for discussion is an annual meeting plan. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. As we move into the budget process, perhaps it's time to have another planning meeting with the governing body to figure out short-term and long-term goals. We've done that the past couple of years over the wintertime, and it can be a different level of sophistication where you have department heads in, where you don't have department heads in, where you talk about budget, where you talk about longer-term goals. So the staff's really looking for some direction on whether or not you want to have this kind of meeting, and if you do, the breadth of what you want to cover.
Councilor, thoughts on that one? Jeff?
Well, I think that would make a lot of sense, especially with a new council, 3 new members, for us to have that meeting. My guess is schedules might be a little difficult between now and the end of the year due to the holidays, but I would think something in whether it's sometime between maybe mid-January or mid-February to help give the town manager some direction on setting up the budget, for one thing.
Right.
I agree.
As do I.
Yeah, one thing I would add to that, I think it would be good to push it back just a little bit more toward February for a couple of reasons. We have several new counselors that I think would be beneficial to spend at least a month or so participating at the council level, getting a feel for the dynamic, where perhaps us getting together in some form of ad hoc planning and vision would be a little more beneficial after they've had, these folks have had a little more chance to step in. I've also talked a little bit with Stathi and Donna about getting some input from both sides about the vision as we look forward, so that we make sure as we sort of craft a visionary fabric, we have everybody's input and we get stakeholders from everybody at the dais as we craft that. So one of the things I think would be helpful, Jeff, when we do structure the agenda, is to assemble some of that information and begin to have a little dialogue before that, so we can identify maybe some target things that are going to be really important to us and that everybody gets a chance to weigh in before we meet. And I do think we may want to think about those focus areas, identifying some staff and department heads that might want to participate based on how that surfaces or percolates. So those would be 2 recommendations I would make that I think would be helpful for all of us at the table. But definitely, I think we need to do it, and a half to 3/4 of a day thing. And in deference, I think I remember residents in town expressed interest when we had our last one to make sure, with respect to expenses, we kept it local. And I think someone thought for some reason we went off to some wild place and had this big retreat. I think we were in the bottom of Silas Dean Middle School, and I think we brought sandwiches ourselves. So just to alert the public, we're not going to go on a wild spending spree to get our heads together. So get that out there quick. But I think this is a great idea. I think we should do it and maybe push it more toward February.
And Mayor, just give the town residents enough advance warning, so if they want to join us for
Yes.
4 to 6 hours on a Saturday, they can do so.
Yes, if their social lives are so impaired that they wish to participate, we'll make it open to them. Are you going to bring cookies, George? All right. I bet Hilga will be happy to cook for us, right? Very good. Jeff, thank you for introducing that. I imagine we'll have some additional discussions about it, so
Absolutely.
thank you. Our last item, I believe, is, I'm sorry. B3C, approval of mattress disposal.
Make a motion to reduce the fees for mattress disposal at the transfer station to $15.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Town Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. The cost for the town to dispose of mattresses has been reduced, and therefore we'd like to pass on that savings to the people that bring mattresses to us to be disposed of, from $25 to $15, and Sally Katz is here to answer any questions on that.
I imagine there'll be a few questions on that. Any?
How many do we get?
Yeah, how many
How many do we
get?
get? We get, I think, a couple hundred a year.
Yes, Mike, you can put yours in too.
I don't have much of a way of a question, but more of a comment. I do support the decreasing of the fee. The state legislature and the governor signed recently a mattress stewardship program. So customers purchasing mattresses pay on the front end. And knowing that I go to the transfer station, having to pay a fee on the back end as well almost seems like you're hitting the consumer twice. Ideally, I'd like to see it go down to a zero fee, but obviously there are costs to the town to take the mattresses away.
There's more for transport.
Right. This is at least a good first step, because hopefully with that stewardship program, they would be paying for the full removal in the future.
Absolutely.
Thanks for
Thank
sharing
you.
that, Mike. Appreciate that. We have a motion, a second on the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. And we have a bid. B4A.
Mayor?
Thank you, Jeff.
If I can make a motion to award a bid for the purchase of fleet vehicles to Mirandy Ford, 2 utility police interceptors, a total expenditure of $61,584, and 2 sedan police interceptors with a total of $56,520.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any comment or thought, questions from the town manager? Jeff, this was within our budget, I assume?
Yes.
And this was included in our previous budget, so this is under the state bid process. And what's the time frame for these to be acquired?
Hopefully within 3 to 4 months, because they are special order.
And they're replacement vehicles, Sally? And then the ones that we're replacing, they're heading to where?
Hopefully, at this point, we're still investigating ways of disposing of the vehicle,
Very-
taking them out of the inventory.
Thank you, Sally. Any other questions, thoughts? We have a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions? Motion passes. We have no ordinance or resolutions for introduction. 6 is meetings of a special meeting, November 11, 2013. Minutes. Motion to approve the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes as drafted.
A second?
Thank you, Donna. Any changes, adjustments, or corrections? Jerry?
On page 3, there's the third paragraph, where it says Mayor Hammond commented, and said she has to agree with Jerry. It should be, my name is misspelled.
Can't have that. Thank you, Jerry. Any other changes or adjustments? Seeing none, motion to approve in a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Thank you, Jeff. In our final, we have public comments. Anybody wishing to finish with a public comment? Mr. Young?
Good evening again, Robert Young, 20 Copper Mill Road. I'd like to follow up on what I was talking about earlier about the MDC. You know, they did get a $2.1 billion bond issue through. And you would think that once that is done, that your operating costs would be reduced. By that, right now they're saying, well, everything is going up because the pipes are bad and this and that. But once that's done, you would think that your operating costs would come down, giving everybody relief. So I don't know why they're looking, I hope you would use that as an example against them when you're talking to them at the next meeting regarding the increase in water prices. Next, I know the town planner was up here talking about different properties around town and what's happening with them. I know we have that Health Bridge nursing home over on, I guess it's Knott Street and Wilkett Hill Road. Anything going on with that? It looks like it's empty, and possibly, you know, make a nice daycare center, make some kind of a private school or something. You know, there's got to be something that they can do with that, bring in revenue. And lastly, I would like to say that I've seen this more than once from this council, actually from Mr. Hawkins, where when a discussion came up regarding his employer, he would get up and walk out of the room, or he wouldn't vote. And I would think that that would be a level of, that we should expect from the rest of our citizens that are up here and at the Board of Education that would have conflicts of interest. I think he's a good example. You know, he does it without being pressured, and I hope he would lead to do it with the rest of us. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you again, Mr. Young. Any other comments? Mr. Rue?
George A. Rue, 956 Cloverdale Circle. It's been interesting. The evaluative process has started. That's what brought me out tonight. See how these guys operate. How these new guys make it out, you know? Couple of thoughts. I evaluate. You all should evaluate. Don't believe everything everybody tells you about doing a great job. That's one of my favorite Board of Ed members' favorite statement. Great job. Anyway, enough said. A comment on the CL&P project, the positive one from my perspective. Some of the questions that you raised were very ably handled in my own situation about a tree. That's sort of a little bit in controversy, but it does present the risk to the electric wires, and you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see that. And I felt that Mr. Croak and how he interacted with me was a very positive. I'm looking for a positive outcome. So I think if that is an indicator, and again, a single rose does not make a summer, but it's a good point, it's a good thought, and I think you want to maybe be a little bit patient with them, as we, the citizens, are required to be patient with our elected officials, our staff officials, and what do you think I'm talking about? Blight. Among things in the future coming up, think of blight as it exists around in various parts of town. Steve Barry grew up in an area that used to be nice. He used to be a little kid, come over with his friends, say, hey, Mr. Rue, turn the lights on so we go skating. It's nothing but blight now. Make sure you keep that high on the agenda. And this is especially on town property. And I see a lot of it, a fair amount of it around town. I say, geez, it's not being done appropriately. So again, a thought. I had to get a chuckle about the discussion on the mattresses. There were a number of articles recently in the New York Times about the bedbug problems in the best hotels in New York. And one time I was driving around Hartford and I saw a truck picking up mattresses. And I said, boy, this is an interesting process. They did this all with great big mechanical arms so they wouldn't have to get near these things. So if you're interested in bedbugs, I have these articles in my computer, but it's something you want to be aware of. So with that, thank you for your services. We'll see you.
Thank you on that note, Mr. Rue.
You gotta keep laughing.
Go ahead, Dolores.
Just want to remind you that on Thursday, November 21st at 7 in the chamber. We will have a special meeting for the council in conjunction with the building committee to award bids on abatement and demo for the high school.
Dolores, just a quick question. Is the board attending that meeting as well?
I'm unsure, I don't know.
Do you know?
Did you want to?
know.
I don't think so.
No, I
don't
I
know.
thought I had heard that the board was also planning to attend, or there had been some reference to it. I don't have a preference, but I was just wondering if that was anticipated. Thank you, Dolores. I think we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you. A
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Yes.